Make a start. We'll make a start. Uh, okay. Fantastic to be here. They say that you host the D-TRO technical webinar twice in your career, once on the way up and once on the way down. It's great to be back. So here we are. Let's go over to Gareth, the agenda. And it is, gang, a pretty packed agenda, I have to say. I don't know how we keep pulling it off, but we do. There's all sorts of exciting things to be telling you about today. But before we get to that, let's hear from John Cooper with an update from the previous webinar. It's our product owner, ladies and gentlemen, John Cooper.
Hi, everyone. Coming to you from the outskirts of Heathrow Airport. I'd like to give it a quick update since the last technical webinar and any other webinars that you may have not, you may have missed a couple along the way. So this will be a general update on all things to do with our launch and how we go. So as you'll probably know, we've been in private beta since the middle of October. We have been running version 3.2.4 for some time. And we announced a couple of weeks ago or so, our new version 3.30 will be officially going live tomorrow. We already dropped some documentation on this, and we are doing a small number of fixes on it because there was some immediate discrepancies that we were alerted to, and we have been doing some emergency repair work, and we believe that we'll be in a state to do the full launch of 3.30 in full working order tomorrow. So be more on that later in the show from John Howard Booth. I'd just like to give a call out at the moment to our process of using our public GitHub, and I will put the link to that in the chat after my section. There are nearly 50 issues now in GitHub, and we do a daily triage on not only GitHub questions, but everything that comes into us via our mailboxes. And we try to ensure that everything is given due care and attention, and a full reply is posted. We do commend it to you as a method of finding out everything that's going on a day-to-day basis, and how we are dealing with queries, bug reports, and everything. A bit more on bug reports later, but also just to mention, because we know everyone's keen on knowing when this is going to happen, the secondary legislation consultation is still upcoming. We still can't say exactly when it's going to be. There is a chance that it could be still before Christmas, but another chance that it could be early in the new year. That isn't really all I can say on that at the moment, but suffice to say, it is still coming. We're sorry it's taken a bit longer to come out than what we originally said, and it will be worth it when it comes out. Finally, to say that we've been a while since we've done an FAQ update. We will try and get one more update in before Christmas, building on questions from recent webinar or two, and probably in the wake of the 3.30 launch. We've got a rapidly dwindling amount of time left before we get to then, but we will do everything we can to get that updated before we go off for Christmas break. So with that, as a quick summary and flagging where there will be some additional information, I'll hand you back to Paul and we'll get on with the rest of the show.
Thank you, John. I think I forgot to mention that people can post their questions in the chat. Don't worry, we won't be promoting you up to the rank of speaker this time. So just post your questions away, safe in the knowledge that they'll be read out by me. And John Cooper, I don't think anyone misses any webinars. If they do, they go back and watch the video. So don't worry about that.
Yeah, just to say the last main webinar is now on YouTube as of today, I believe.
Wow, what a tight ship we run. And talking of tight ships, it's Gareth Tilley, ladies and gentlemen.
Thanks, Paul. I just wanted to give everyone an update on where we are with the private beta, with the two different environments. There's been an awful lot of activity in integration, so thanks a lot for that. Just a quick summary in terms of numbers, some of the stats. So we've got 14 organisations fully onboarded to integration environments. We've had a lot of testing going on. So essentially, we've had over 7,000 submissions, successful submissions. We've had a lot of searches by the data consumers as well. And currently, we've got just over, when I put this slide together, over 300 D-TROs in the integration environment itself. But it should be said, some people are testing the delete function, so that's been really good to see. And so at a peak, we had nearly 2,000, and we've had 1,500 deleted in the last week, for example. So the whole functionality of publishing, consuming, deleting, all those things have been really fantastically tested in the integration. So we're really pleased to see all the level of activity in the integration environment. Production isn't quite where we'd like it to be. We've had 5 organisations on board, and we've got a really good blend of onboarding going on. So we've got 2 DSPs, for example, digital solution providers, and they've linked to 9 traffic regulation authorities. We've also got a traffic regulation authority onboarded production who do their own publishing, and we've got 2 data consumers as well. So we've got a nice mix. What we're lacking at the moment is D-TROs in production. And from our meetings, we have regular meetings with folk, digital solution providers, and traffic regulation authorities. And our understanding, our expectation from our conversation with those is that that number is going to be increasing quite a lot soon. So watch this space, and hopefully next week we'll have a lot more D-TROs in the production environment as well, and then people can test the consuming a lot more in anger as well. Paul, that was the high-level summary I wanted to give on beta, just where we are in terms of usage of the 2 environments for the service.
Thank you very much, Gareth. A lovely update, if I may say so. Why have one update when you can have 2? Ladies and gentlemen, let's hear from John Harrod Booth about the data specification. There can't be much news about this data specification, surely, Jonathan?
Oh, pages of it, Paul, pages of it. No, not so much news. So, distracted slightly. I'm the gatekeeper, so I keep getting notifications. We released on the 17th of October version 3.2.4. We received a number of GitHub comments on that, but actually, I think in comparison to previous versions, it was more stable. So there's more general inquiries and less things of I really don't understand the consistency of these things. So I think that was an improvement. But what we were doing at that point was triaging quite heavily, and so we necessarily, because of the time we had before that, took an approach which said, if this change requires a change to the software code base of the D-TRO service, then we won't include it. If it's a change we think is important in terms of correction, misalignment of documentation and what have you, and it didn't require a code change, then we would make it. So that was the rationale for 3.2.4, which is why I mentioned that. We've now released 3.3.0, which was published yesterday. It picks up a number of those topics and some additional user requests. We're constantly looking at all of the comments that come into us, primarily through GitHub, but also some direct emails. And we have a regular process where we're triaging those and sifting them as to whether we can include them in the release or not. So this does include a software code base update, and I'll show you on the next slide some of the major topics. But as I said, we continue to review what we're doing, and you're a bit too fast, Gareth. Thank you. So the backlog is in constant review. Please raise issues if you have any issues arising. It's preferably via GitHub, but we're quite happy to receive them by whatever route, and we will look at them and take them quite seriously in terms of how we try to address them. Next slide, please. So sorry for the density on this slide. I can remember somebody saying never more than 7 words on a slide, so I clearly failed. But this has been posted onto GitHub and is basically the high-level summary of what we've done. There were some, I'm not going to go through this in great detail, but there were some inconsistencies that exist between the various artifacts of the data specification, so the data model, the schema, the data model user guide, the sample files, the interface control documents, the validation files. They all form the specification as a whole, and there were some inconsistencies that had arisen, and so we've taken actions to try and remove as many of those as is possible. There is a limitation on resource, so as you can see on item 1, I've noted it's partially addressed. So we're going through a process of changing the relationships between some of the key objects in the model with their children. But unfortunately, the resources we have to hand we couldn't deal with all of those. We've done some of them, but we've also tried to work through other items as well. So as you work your way down this list, and I'm not going to go item by item, you'll notice items like number 4, where there was a request came in from TfL saying we don't find a regulation type that we need. Could this please be included? Well, yes, that's how you get things included. So it's now in version 3.3.0. During the submission into the integration environment, we noticed that some of the D-TRO records coming in listed attributes in different orders, and in the previous version of the software, that actually caused us problems. It would throw errors. So we've now got a more agnostic system. So it doesn't matter what order your properties come in within your records, the system will cope with that. We also found some errors ourselves. So, for example, 7, nobody else seemed to spot it, but I managed to spot it, which was there was something wrong in the previous data model where there was an obvious inconsistency between objects and relationships, and that's been corrected. One of you users identified that we had different documentation within the user guide and the data model to the schema. We've introduced that. And then we've also introduced the capability for diversion routes, partially because we know it's needed, and also there were user requests coming in saying, how do we do this? So we use that capability. And I'll talk a little bit more about that a little bit later on in this presentation. Next slide, please. We are trying to give you a body of sample files. We're trying to do 2 things with this, which is we don't want to end up with a library of hundreds, because that means every time we up version, potentially we have to update hundreds, but we are trying to increase the complexity of them. So we have examples here where we have one that shows a diversion route. I'll show you that example later. But we've got examples of nested conditions, what you do if you want to override an existing provision. So there's examples coming here. We will, in the near future, produce 2 other further examples. One is a very large example, so a much larger file. And the other is a file which will try to cover the entirety of the model. So there are certain bits of the model which our examples don't cover at the moment, and we will work to provide that as soon as we practically can. Again, please request if there are particular things where you're not sure how you'd expect things to be coded. Maybe it's not obvious in the user guide, or you don't find an example that helps you with that, then please let us know. and we will attempt to address that. And I think that's me on this section. Oh, sorry, I should say that. Same message as the previous technical webinar. So if you're going to use these sample files, it's probable that if you pick them up in their native format and throw them into the system, that you'll get errors back. That's because they're actually the sample files which we get as they come out the back end of the system, which has appended a certain set of metadata at the top and the bottom of the file. So you need to make a manual edit if you're going to use the sample files we've provided to just strip out schema version and data at the top end and a curly bracket at the bottom end, and then you will find that they will properly validate and they should go through the service quite happily. We also use, in the examples that we've provided, they are actually all do have real TRA codes. So most of them are Somerset, purely because I'm based in Somerset, but there's also one for Derbyshire. You may need to change those to your purposes if you're going to use those through your applications. And that really is me on this section.
That's the typical pro Somerset bias we've come to expect of this project, I guess. Well, I don't want to let anyone behind the magician's curtain, but I did take a snip of the agenda and now I have lost it. So excitingly, I'm not too sure what's next on the running order. Gareth, do feel free to DM me, but let's see what's next.
It's over to Vinesh, I think.
Is it Vignesh talking about bugs and GitHub and stuff? Vignesh, who are you and welcome?
Hello, Paul. Hi, everyone. My name is Vinesh. I'm the technical lead from PA who's supporting the D-TRO application. So once again, thanks a lot for everyone to join this call, and thank you for using the application. Of course, that's always a good thing, and identifying possible enhancements that you feel like are necessary to help ease your life, and also just for you to make the product better, useful for everyone, really, not just for yourselves, but also to identify issues that we may have not addressed during our test campaign, or we just may have just missed completely. Appreciate some of you may have seen these slides already about providing information, relevant information when raising bugs. I just wanted to bring it up again here, but I also want to highlight that thanks to John Cooper, you don't have to remember all of these points by heart. When you go to GitHub and select issues and report a bug, there is a default template there that has all the information on this page, on this slide here, and the next slide, to remind you what information we require in order to identify the issue in our system and to try to understand how to resolve it. So I'll just do a quick recap here. So firstly, please provide the full endpoint with all the parameters and bodies you are using to make a call. So in this example, when you're doing a search, we have the full search endpoint plus the parameter, the body you're providing within the -- data section. Ideally, in this format would be great, or if you could share your code, if that's possible, that would be also acceptable as well, just so we could see what endpoint you're hitting and what exact parameter and what exact body or payload you're passing to us. Next slide, please, Gareth. And provide the full error message that comes directly from D-TRO. So in this case, this is internal server error as we've used as an example. Hopefully you see less of this and more useful error messages, but whatever error message you see, please pass that along. Provide the date and time when you made the call and saw the error. This will allow us to look into our logs to find more information. Also provide what you were actually expecting to happen. So if you're expecting some sort of success or a different error message or different message in return, please let us know so we can clarify exactly whether this was expected or not. How did you find the error? Please provide us steps to reproduce, what schema version you're using, and anything relevant you feel like you need to raise or tell us about the issue. That'll be greatly appreciated. Again, you don't have to remember all of this. When you go to GitHub issues and create a bug report, all of this will be in the template there. So just please follow what it states in the template and add all the relevant information. And it will make our lives very easy make it easy, make it easier, and we can hopefully get issues fixed and out to you guys as soon as possible. Thanks a lot. Back to you, Paul.
Thanks, Vignesh. So if I was listening correctly there, guys, you need to remember all of that. We won't be sharing that again or putting this part of the webinar onto YouTube. I hope I've understood that correctly. Well, okay. What a treat to have Vignesh popping in, guys. But now it's back to the man himself, John Howard Booth, to tell us a little bit more about a subject close to my heart and maybe some of yours, diversion routes.
Thank you, Paul. Next slide, please. So it was obvious, and there was user comment that we were going to need to introduce diversion routes into how we model things and the D-TRO records you're supplying. Actually, that can be done with a relatively simple change. So using the existing structure, which I'm sure those of you who are crawling over the schema and the documentation will be quite familiar with, we simply added in an option into regulated place, which is the object which looks a little bit different in this slide to all of the others. That says, I'm going to give you information to do with geometry and to do with USRNs and what have you in the model below it. And I'm going to do that either against a regulation location, which is what the original intended purpose was, or against a diversion route or routes. You can provide many. So it's simply a switch at that level. The requirement is that you still provide for each provision that you provide a regulated place that points at where the regulation is in effect. But if you wish to supply diversion routes, you can do that as well. In how that's best done, I'm going to talk you through this and then I'll show you an example. Realistically, we would expect you to use linear geometry. So that's providing a polyline, obviously start, end, and as many intermediate points as is necessary to describe the route. Noting some of the records that we've seen coming in, there is a strong desire that you also supply USRNs. I realise there's a topic of discussion in one of the queries that we've received today on that topic. Why? Because supplying the geometry may enable most data suppliers to fit against whatever map they are using, but some will use USRNs, and it's government policy that if we are producing a road-oriented data set, that we include USRNs. Next slide, please. So sorry for the Somerset bias, Paul. This is Taunton, the fine capital of Somerset. And for those who know it, the tiny green blob in the bottom right corner is on a road called East Reach. Don't know quite why it's called East Reach, but it is. And that's a main through route. So if you're coming from the right-hand side, M5 junction 25, and you're heading off the bottom left corner, which is the A38 down towards Wellington and ultimately Exeter, then you tend to go along East Reach. So we're going to theorise that there is a temporary closure there on East Reach. And if you go to the next slide, please, Gareth. So we can describe a diversion route. I suspect in most TTROs that exist at the moment, at least on the legal order, that's described textually. So we can describe the diversion route, and I've just come up with something. The names of the roads are the official names. I've added in the fact they're all A roads, but I guess that wouldn't happen in cases. That's all right, Ben. And I've noted it's bidirectional, but that's all textual. Next slide, please. Actually, when you draw that route, which I think probably is a viable diversion route, it comes up in the green. If you have included all of the USRNs, then you will find that that replicates that route. But also, practically speaking, that's the sort of level of detail that you're going to have to go through to identify a route that is clearly different from any other route. That results in about 10 USRNs for that route, which is relatively complicated. Next slide, please. By geometry, it may be possible, and this is an interesting point of discussion, because those who do this sort of thing on a regular basis may say that won't work and you'd have to be more detailed. I have a start point on the right-hand side, I have an end point bottom left, and I've picked 3 intermediate points which are on the road, and I think for some routing engines that would probably be sufficient for them to find that route. Talking to some of the suppliers, they say, well, we do it differently and we pick up geometries from Google Maps, for example. Okay, I'm sure there are alternative ways to do this. We have to work within the constraints of what we've got, but we have open ears, and if there are better alternate ways of doing this, then we're open to listening to what you have to say. Next slide, please. And this example is one of the examples that's available, so you can go and pick over the nether regions of Somerset to your heart's content. But it basically shows the approach that we have. In the, I should say, in the metadata, you can describe whether this route is bidirectional or not, and you could qualify it in a number of different ways as well. So you could say it's a route only for lorries, for example. Thank you very much, and back to you, Paul.
Thanks, guys. Remember, you don't have to follow JHB's official diversion route there. Maybe you can duck down through North Town, unless there's some sort of one-way system in place. Obviously, I don't have that level of local knowledge that Ben and John do. So one question we've got in, and it's for the man himself, John Cooper. There are lots of documents available in GitHub. Can you point him to a single starting document? What's the key text?
Actually, that document may not be on GitHub. If you're just starting from scratch and you want to get onboarded to our system, we'd like to hear from you in the first place, and then we can send out onboarding documents that shows you how to use the Apigee portal to request an account, get your app set up, your key, your secret, and that will get you as far as yeah. So I can see you saying you want to come on board. Just drop us an email to the CSO mailbox, D-TRO CSO at dft.gov.uk. It's earlier up in the chat. I put it in there just before, and we'll send you out an onboarding pack. This contains information about starting, as I've just outlined, and then from then on, it really depends on what kind of solution you are going to use in order to send D-TROs to the system. Are you going to do it yourself? What software are you going to use? Is it customizable to produce orders that are compliant with the D-TRO specification? If you can write what you're after in the email, and this goes for anyone else who's keen and still joining private beta, we can advise you on how to get going. We can even jump on a quick call and help configuration, as we know that occasionally there can be little nooks and crannies that need to be smoothed out in order to get people all up and running.
Is ours from a DSP, John Cooper?
If the TRA that is keen on getting involved actually is working with a DSP, then this route is somewhat simpler. If that DSP already has a solution that is now currently working and submitting orders to either our integration or our production environments, I think that all that is really needed in that point is that an agreement is, we know about the agreement between you and that DSP to publish the orders on your behalf, and that the DSP knows that you are signed up to come in and you would like your orders to be processed. Then the DSP will create an app for your TRA alongside ones they've created for other TRAs that they've already got up and running, and thereafter they can publish your orders to the system without you really having to do all the encoding and getting on the API and the publication and etc.
Thank you, JC, and thank you to JHB for running some updates on the abbreviations that we've been using in the C or the MC. That's the meeting chat. Well, I don't think there are any other questions, but feel free to put them in if there are, which takes us to our kind of, well, I'll tell you what, here's a question for you. Is this a question or is this more of a statement of fact? Okay, I guess this is more a question for John Howard Booth. The new data model user guide includes an example for a more complicated use of conditions and condition sets. John, will there be any advice, examples for TRA end users on how to set their, come on, ands, ors, or XORs? I think Mike just wanted to make me say all this. I can see users easily getting this slightly wrong, and there is no method to validate and see what they have entered in human terms. John's nodding. John?
Yeah, we're working on examples. It was an offer that was made, I think, in the last technical webinar. If somebody has a D-TRO record and they think it replicates a real TRO and they want us to do a cross-check, as long as there's not hundreds of them, then we will happily do that. We are working to produce a broader set of examples. The condition sets and conditions example that we've come up with starts to introduce a bit of complexity, but we can try and improve that. And if we need more examples or more textual based examples, then we can do that. You're right, there isn't a way to easily validate those things at the moment. So maybe that's something we need to look at in the future.
And also, John, it would be good to have an explanation of what the nested condition sets in the example file means in practice. I think it's somewhat confusing for people.
You almost made that sound as though it came out of your mouth, Paul. Yeah, it's a bit of a parentheses and maths logic problem. But I'm sure we can work up some more examples that will try to help to clarify.
Thank you, John.
Cool.
Yes.
John, is it possible inside example files to write metadata comments that actually don't form part of the file, but are there for note purposes?
I'm sure we can find a way to do that.
And even if that isn't compatible with sending to the system, it would still be possible for us to produce, presumably, an annotated version that says, here's what this bit does, and that's what that bit does.
Yep.
I think that's probably the way around that for David and everyone else that's going to use example files that have more, as we go to more and more complex and larger example files, I can see how it can become confusing to know which bit of the file you're looking at. And some metadata like you have in websites would be useful, wouldn't it?
Yep.
Okay, thanks everyone. I think now we're going to hear about our engagement program. We are sort of out of conference season, convention season. So, we don't have a huge number of in-person events coming up as we head into December. But if there were any booked in, we would be there. Dr. Gareth Tilley, what's up?
Well, as you say, Paul, it's we're coming to the end of the conference season, aren't we? And the end of the calendar year. So what we'll do is we'll put in our next webinar for early 2025. In the meantime, we've got our regular ongoing one-to-one sessions with most of the folk on this call, just to get that touch point and to understand where people are in terms of particularly publishing to the production environment. In the meantime, we've got the GitHub and other ways of getting in touch, which I'll run through on the next slide. But one other thing I wanted to flag was we have set up a GIS Teams channel as well for people who are using they've got different GIS tools, and they're wanting to self-publish D-TRO. So that's particularly for traffic regulation authorities, and people are discussing already on there what types of software they're using, and there's good discussion going on that channel as well. So if you do want to get added to that list, let us know. And then I just wanted to end on, these are the channels that you all know about already. GitHub for raising technical issues. We're really pleased with how that's working. We've got our open GitHub page. As John Cooper said, we've had nearly 50 technical issues raised, which is great. TTF forum website, again, I'm sure folk know about that. That has got the YouTube playlist, that's got all our webinar information, but it's also got, our hub for regular announcements and newsletters and things like that. It's also got FAQ, and as John said, we'll look to update that imminently and get a release hopefully before the end of the calendar year. We've got the D-TRO web address as well. So if you want to get in touch, if you've got any questions, it's just that simple, dtro@dft.gov.uk. And if there are any questions, if you do have any problems in particular using integration or production environment, just reach out to us directly as well, and we'll get in touch and see if we can help resolve your issues. I think, Paul, that was the main stuff I wanted to run through, just in terms of kind of contact information. I'm sure we'll have a full calendar of engagement events lined up for January and February before long as well to announce.
Thank you, Gareth. Please do pop into the YouTube channel, guys. I'm trying to shamelessly get up to 100,000 views. Well, if there's no more questions and there's nothing else from us, why delay the inevitable any further? Let's say see you in the future, guys. Thanks so much for joining this webinar. Take care of yourself and see you at the top.